Before this starts, I just want to say a huge thank you to the band TANDEM FELIX, who've let me use their song Canyons, which will play at the very end of this episode. It's one of my favourite songs right now, and their lead singer is one of my oldest friends. Me and him, he actually told me that if I use his song, I have to tell you guys about our musical history, which I don't think I'm going to do because it's pretty embarrassing, but me and him used to be in a band, and yeah, maybe someday I'll just get him on the show and he can tell you guys about it. But I'm going to leave links to their SoundCloud, their Bandcamp page, their Facebook page, all of that stuff in the description. And if you are a fan of alternative music at all, they are definitely worth checking out. I'm not saying this because I've been paid to do it. I haven't been paid to do it. They're just honestly one of my favorite bands. They're one of the hottest up and coming bands in Ireland at the moment. And I don't know, I think that for any of you who enjoy alternative music and new bands and stuff, you guys should check them out because they're absolutely awesome. That's all I wanted to say about that. Their song I'll play at the very end. Like I said, it's called Canyons. It's a lovely song. It's one of my favorites. So also in the description you'll find a link to Jack's Twitter, which you might as well just go and follow him. He's pretty much like a recurring host who's kind of always going to be a host on this show. And if you follow me on Twitter, you might as well follow him because we kind of have the very, very similar sense of humor. So yeah, follow him on Twitter.
Let's get this show on the road then.
What's going on, guys? My name is El De Niro, and welcome to another episode of the Midnight Hour. This is episode 7 overall, and my guest once again is Jack, who likes to slay blue whales and win wrestling titles, because that's what he's about. If you want to back up that claim.
Yeah,
anyway.
I wasn't able to defend my title recently, I'm afraid, but because I was busy flying around the world fighting certain aquatic people.
Yes, and we actually have a sponsor for today's episode. This episode is sponsored by yes. So a lot of you already know what this topic is because we briefly touched on it in the last episode, but this will be about fan theories, and this is different from fan fiction. This isn't about love triangles between Harry Potter characters. These are essentially alternate interpretations that search for a different or indeed a deeper meaning behind a TV show or a movie, or sometimes books as well, but we don't have any of those. They can be taken with a pinch of salt, or they can genuinely enhance your enjoyment of something that you were once a huge fan of, that if you went back to it now it wouldn't be the same, but if you have this other meaning to it, it can sort of add another layer to your enjoyment of it. I think it's always interesting to find an alternative meaning in something if it can be justified. It can just add a little bit extra to it that you never really had before. And such TV shows, mentioned briefly about Pokemon in the last one, which we'll talk about later on, but we'll start off with the Rugrats one, which Jack has got all the info on.
I'll take this. I'm just paraphrasing a creepypasta which you could probably find fairly easily, and I'm just going to give you the basics of the fan theory from the TV show. Basically, the Rugrats were all a figment of Angelica's imagination. Chucky died in 1986 along with his mother, and that's why Chaz is a nervous wreck all the time. Tommy
perfect sense.
was born in 1988, but he was a stillborn, so that's why Stu is constantly in the basement making toys for the son he never had the chance to live.
That could also explain why Tommy is so pale. Because maybe if she caught a glimpse of him. Yeah.
And the DeVilles had an abortion in 1990, and Angelica couldn't figure out whether it was a boy or a girl, so she created twins, one of each gender.
Whoa.
And that's the basic thing for the first, the basic fan theory for the first few seasons, as it were, of Rugrats. It doesn't really incorporate any of the later edition characters like Susie Diddle or any of the characters that come in on the Paris movie.
Yeah.
But there is plenty there to read if you want to go even further into the rest of the films and the later TV shows and the spin-off series.
Yeah,
well.
You would just search Rugrats creepypasta.
Yeah, that'll come up.
For anyone who doesn't know what a creepypasta is, it's sort of like it's like an internet. It's kind of like a message board, and they write a lot of crazy, scary things. It's called creepy for a reason. Like a lot of the things on there are a little bit, I don't know,
creepy.
Out of this world. Yeah. But that Rugrats one, is really interesting because Angelica is definitely the most, like, I know she's the oldest, right?
Yeah, she's the oldest by about a year or two, I think.
But she's very seemingly troubled. I know a lot of kids are probably manipulative in their own ways when they learn how to act in social situations and stuff, but she's definitely got a little bit of an edge to her, like,
yeah.
You could definitely see it being true, and that she's added all these things in to just cope with all of the bad things that happen around her, I guess.
It's maybe not the bad things that happen to her, but think about her parents as well. You've got both, the high-flying business types who never seem to spend any time with their daughter.
Yeah.
And, it's another coping mechanism for the lack of love that her parents show her, as it were. By creating all of these extra friends that she can command over, and be not a parent to. Well, I suppose she is projecting how her parents have treated her onto the figments of her imagination, as it were.
Yeah, she definitely is, and that's it's so weird because last night I was listening to a podcast from Stuff You Should Know, and they were talking about I forget the technical term for it, but it's what used to be called, it's something like dissociative personality disorder. It used to be referred to as split personality disorder, and it's kind of what it's like when you create an alter ego within yourself. And the reason that people the reason that this happens within people's psyches is because they are overwhelmed by stress or anxiety or whatever, and they just form a completely different personality.
Yeah, someone that doesn't have to deal with it. Yeah,
exactly. And that's how it's formed, as a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
So for it to be prevalent with somebody who is clearly under a certain amount of distress in their lives actually makes perfect sense. And that's why fan theories are fucking awesome. Like, that is definitely something that could legitimately be, what's the word? It could legitimately be portrayed in that show. And I don't know, that, like, I purposely avoided reading it because I knew you were going to talk about it, but when you said it there, it actually makes kind of a ridiculous amount of sense.
Yeah, I mean, an important thing to remember is, even though that these are, kids programs, some of the things that we talk about, kids programs, they are written by adults, and there's no reason why, TV writers and, people that are in creative positions do have a fairly noted history of putting Easter eggs, as it were, or, different meanings into things and stuff like that, and double entendres where, for people to spot and things like that. They're known to TV, not just kids' TV shows, but TV shows, films, and that in general are known for having sometimes hidden meanings. So I mean, it's not too much of a stretch of the imagination to say that that's possible.
No, it's not. Even in songwriting and stuff, like when some people take on, say, like, I want to throw this example out because it's just come to me, but say the Beatles employed I think he was a producer, and I can't remember his name because I'm a terrible person, but he was the guy who came up with loads of children's albums before he moved on with the Beatles, and when he started working with them, they kind of formed Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which is like, they created the first concept album with that, but the concept is essentially that they're no longer the Beatles, they're a different band in a different universe, and there's no reason to say that a children's show writer couldn't have done that with his show. If that's, maybe he wanted to test his limits or something like that, or add another layer to it. I'd like to know if he was ever, or whoever the creators were, if they were ever asked about it, or I think a lot of, like, when a lot of directors are asked questions like that, they kind of make comments that allude to it being a possibility, but they never explicitly state it at any point.
Yeah, you've just said, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but there was I can't remember, I'll have to find it and properly, but it was, this guy had made a film and there was an ambiguous ending to it, or there was part of this there was this big ambiguity surrounding this cult film, and he was asked, or it was a book or something, and he was asked again and again and again in interviews about what certain thing meant, and eventually he said something just off the cuff. He just said, oh, this is what it means, or he gave some other really vague clue, and then for the rest of his life, the next 50 years, he was asked now and again by interviewers, by fans, by anyone, what he meant when he said in that interview this off the cuff remark. And I think it was like the last interview, or one of the last interviews he did before he died, someone said to him, come on, what does it mean? Come on. And he just went, Doesn't mean a fucking anything. I just said it, and everyone was just like, "What? Why? Why did you do this?" So
That's
and he was
disappointing.
like, he was the director of a film or writer of a book or something like that. I'll have to source where that very vague story comes from, but
Yeah, obviously.
I mean, there's plenty of reasons and things where things can have no meaning at all, and or might have loads of meaning and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you mentioning that song just reminded me that we were, apparently the Beatles song "I Am the Walrus" has no meaning really.
No.
And everyone's tried to figure out the meaning, but it was written because Lennon's old English teacher was making his students analyse Beatle lyrics.
Yeah, that's what it was.
So he wrote that song just to fuck with everybody, basically.
Yeah. His sole motivation for writing that song was just figure this out, you bastards.
Yeah.
Like, he did. I don't know. I guess he didn't want anybody interpreting things, or he wanted to leave a little bit of mystery. So he just wrote that song. And the Beatles alluded to that in a later song, and I forget which Beatle it even. I think it was Paul. But he had a song that said, "I'll give you a clue. The walrus was John," and then that opened it all up again with people trying to figure it out again.
Yeah.
But it was just made up just to fuck with people, basically.
Mm.
Another fan theory we'll move on to is one that I really, really like, and this is to do with James Bond. I don't know where this comes from originally. I first read it in an Empire magazine, probably like around the time Pierce Brosnan was James Bond, because I had a difficult time accepting that, and I think we all did as movie fans. But the idea is that every different actor to play James Bond was actually a completely different agent who worked for MI6. Is it MI6 as Bond?
MI6, MI5, something.
Yeah.
It's MI something.
Yeah, it is, yeah. But James Bond is just a code name assigned to whoever the top agent is at that time. And the same goes for Q and M and things like that. And I really like this theory because I think James Bond is just a ridiculous and tired chain of movies that the world would be better off without. I don't know, I really dislike James Bond. I loved it when I was a kid, but it's just... How many times can he save the world in these ridiculous scenarios and still remain a covert agent? You know what I mean?
I suppose so. But I mean, you say how can he remain a covert agent? Well, it's because it's not the same agent. That's how he can remain a covert agent. But then again, the name James Bond should then become a kind of thing. Or if he says he's James Bond, you should probably watch out for him.
Yeah. Yeah. He would have a growing reputation in the underworld.
But yeah, the good thing about that theory is that even though the the people some of the people change in that that theory, M stays the same and ages with it, as it were. Since I can't remember the first film that.
I think the first one was Doctor No.
Yeah. But yeah, like she's aged with the films almost.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. But whereas Q has, Q and Bond and everybody else has kind of bounced around and changed.
Well, Q died, didn't he? The guy who plays him. I don't like James Bond at all. But this theory does, beyond explaining why the guy looks completely different. It also kind of explains the obvious advances in technology, and it can also kind of it's a good way for his
forever youthful appearance, and even if he does have major changes in hairstyles, voice and body type, it sticks. It's that I think that's the most logical thing, really. It's not even really a fan theory. I'd say that it's the most logical conclusion rather than a
few
ridiculous
directors,
off the wall thing.
A few directors rejected the idea, but there's one director who I think is the same guy that did GoldenEye. He prefers that theory, and he's accepted it. So it's kind of just, I guess it's open, it's out there. I don't know if Ian Fleming, or is that the guy who made Bond?
Yeah, Ian Fleming wrote it, yeah.
He also wrote Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. There's a little bit of trivia for you. But I don't know if he's ever commented on it, but it definitely makes perfect sense to me. And it also enhances my enjoyment of it, even though that's very minimal. So I don't really like it that much. But there was another theory that kind of branches out from that a little bit, and this is to do with the movie The Rock, which is from 96, I think.
Something like that.
It's known as one of the few movies in the world that Michael Bay has gotten right, and it's a really good movie. You guys should watch it. Nicolas Cage is in it. Sean Connery is in it. But the theory is that Sean Connery's character is actually James Bond, and he was caught spying on America. And that's why he spent the rest of his life in different prisons across the US. And there's a part in the movie where they introduce Sean Connery's character, and they specify that he does not exist in the United States or Great Britain. And that could be because James Bond is not a person, it's a code name.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree, yeah. That seems like a fairly logical one again.
Yeah.
But it's also just one of those things that possibly was written in as a kind of a hat tip to James Bond.
I don't know who wrote The Rock, but I know that Michael Bay does not have that kind of ability to do something like that, you know. But
I think Michael Bay doesn't specialise in subtlety.
No, I think that's a very, very valid point. I think if anyone could come up with any instance of Michael Bay being subtle, I'd be very interested to hear it and then refute it undeniably.
Yeah, so shall we move on to Aladdin now?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, slightly different from James Bond, but I'm just gonna paraphrase something. It was actually originally a post on 4chan, as far as I'm aware. It's the original original source for this fan theory. But it says in one scene, the genie calls Owl's clothes so 3rd century. The genie was trapped in the lamp for 10,000 years, so there's no way he could know of the fashion trends which have happened whilst he was in the lamp. That means that the latest the genie could have been trapped in the lamp was during the 3rd century. If he spent 10,000 years in there, then it's at least the year 10,300 AD when he gets out. Therefore, Aladdin takes place in the future, in a post-apocalyptic world where only Arabic and some Greek culture has survived. You know, things like parts of the Islamic religion where people still praise Allah in moments of happiness, and the technological marvels left behind by the previously, the previous civilization, like flying carpets and the talking parrot. They're taken for granted by locals or considered magic.
Yeah.
And if anyone's seen Aladdin, the genie also does a lot of impressions of old, very old, long dead. The word I'm not sure if the word celebrity is right, but
no, it's the personalities.
Personalities, yeah. He does a lot. He does a lot of impressions of people that are still, would not be relevant essentially in that timeline. But I've ever since I read that one, I've always thought it was very interesting.
Yeah, I like that one a lot.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. Because there was the other Aladdin fan theory that you said about, that you mentioned briefly to me earlier before we started.
Yeah, this was the one that everything in Aladdin is a fabrication that the guy selling the lamp has made up just to sell the lamp, pretty much. But that one is not that interesting because that's the whole discussion on it, is that the guy just made it up.
The guy made it up. But
plus, what kind of bad salesman would you have to be if your pitch is about 9 hours? It's just a lamp, dude. You keep it. That's fine. Yeah. I'll move on.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be. I haven't actually watched Aladdin again since I read this theory, and I've not been meaning to, but I've always thought, I'd really like to watch Aladdin again and watch through and pick out these things where they mention various things and the genie makes references to the past and stuff like that, or what was recent past to us but the distant past to them.
Yeah. Does he do like a Michael Jackson impression at one point?
I think he does a Jack Nicholson impression at one point.
Yeah, that's right.
Rightly.
Yeah. I seem to recall that as well, and maybe a Mrs. Doubtfire one.
Possibly, because it was
Robin Williams.
Robin Williams that did the voicing for the genie. So
I read today actually that they're making a sequel to Mrs. Doubtfire.
I would love that.
But what would the premise of it be?
I have no idea, because the whole the whole concept of him dressing as Mrs. Doubtfire is shot because they know he's Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah, exactly.
So unless he goes dressed as a woman into some random children's home, but then again, that's just a case for arrest under child.
Yeah, protection.
Protection laws.
They should do a gritty reboot where like he dresses up as a female assassin and slashes people and
a really fat assassin.
Yeah, but they could just call it Doubtfire and like have like flames surrounding the name while it comes up on the screen and all, like with a typical new age movie poster with blue and orange everywhere.
Fuck it, yeah. I'd watch it. Like,
I would as well, but I would regret it immediately after watching it.
Well, yeah, but you know.
I guess the Aladdin one has a post-apocalyptic element to it, and this next one also does, and that's the best I can do to segue into it, and if that's not good enough, you can go fuck yourself. But this one is from SpongeBob SquarePants, and it's kind of the idea that everything that happens in the... What's the name of it again? The Bikini Bottom.
Bikini Bottom. It's just Bikini Bottom.
The Bikini Bottom is where the US tested 23 nuclear bombs in history, and everything that lives there supposedly is mutated in some form. Now the creator of SpongeBob, his name is Steven Hillenburg. He actually studied marine biology at Orange County, Maine, which is a site in the Pacific Ocean where the US tested bombs, so he would obviously be aware of the Bikini Bottom, and he would obviously know of the dangers of that because he's a marine biologist, and he probably was against it as well because you know, he's a marine biologist. He's about preservation of life so that he can study it and things like that. But it's not a far cry from the notion that everything that happens in SpongeBob world is somewhat realistic. It's just an example of mutated underwater existence.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it was the 23 nuclear. I think the testing site was called the Bikini Atoll or the Bikini Atoll, however you pronounce it. But and then, you know, with SpongeBob's hometown being called Bikini Bottom, it's not, you know, it's a fair jump between the two theories, or not theories, but the two pieces of evidence. I guess that's the best name for it.
Yeah. That one's good though, because it's kind of, I don't know, SpongeBob has a huge fan base, which I've never understood. I think I was just too late to the SpongeBob party. It seems like a really goofy and awful show to me when I watch it, to be honest.
I heard another theory that the characters in the show represent the 7 deadly sins.
Oh, really?
It's not quite a perfect theory, but if you know the general characters, you've got Squidward, who's wrath, Mr. Krabs is greed, Plankton would be envy, although I'd probably say that Squidward is envy and Plankton's greed, wrath, sorry, but Sandy would be pride, Patrick sloth, SpongeBob lust, but more of in a love for his job than in a sexual lust.
Oh, right.
Possibly, and then Gary the snail being gluttony, and that comes from the running joke about him always needing to be fed.
Oh, right.
That runs throughout SpongeBob. But that's also, I think there's a lot of, there's a fair amount of TV shows and films where people like to pin characters as representations of the 7 deadly sins, you know.
Yeah, or like every character sort of has to have a certain persona in order to do what they do. Like in order for them to exist, they have to carry out certain things, so it just really suits the... I remember reading once that there are only 7 different types of ways to tell a story or something like that. Like there's a journey or a quest, there's a revenge, there's love, like things like that. And I'd imagine it's quite similar for characters in basic type of sense. Like you've always got one good guy, you've always got one guy who's on the fence, he appears to be bad but he's actually good. You've always got stuff like that going on, and it's probably a similar idea with SpongeBob. I'm trying to think really quick off the top of my head if I could put that onto another thing, but I can't because it's just too much to ask. But that's an interesting one about SpongeBob. I like that. I like these theories way more than I like the show. I think the show is awesome. I said to you earlier that I went back to watch SpongeBob again recently, and it just annoyed the fuck out of me. You know,
simply dreadful.
Liam Gallagher is a huge fan of it.
Really?
Yeah, and he's got like the creators of it have sent him like customized DVDs so that they give messages to his son, like the actual characters. But I remember once reading an interview with Liam Gallagher, which obviously didn't read very well because it's an interview with Liam Gallagher. But he was asked about SpongeBob, and he was like, "Yeah, I love him. Like, he's a little sponge, and he lives under the sea, and he's fucking mad for it." It's just the most Liam Gallagher thing I've ever read. Is ridiculous, like mind-bogglingly stupid. But we move on to another kids' TV show.
Film. The Toy Story theory. There's two really. I'll start with the idea that the whole of the Toy Story takes place in a household in the midst of a divorce.
Yeah.
So you don't ever see the father. There's a distinct absence of the father. You always see the wife and or the mum, who's actually part of the other theory, and that theory about Andy, I forgot his name there. Andy's mother is based around the idea that she is the original owner of the Jessie doll that it takes part in the second film.
Yeah.
And that comes around from when you see Andy playing with his Woody doll. Andy's hat is distinctively different to the hat that Woody wears.
Yeah, his is a giant red one.
Yeah, with white piping or white piping. Whereas Woody's one is just a almost plain brown cowboy hat. And then there's things in the second Toy Story where you see into the little girls that owned Jessie's room, and she's got that same hat that Andy was wearing. And parents pass down toys and stuff to their kids. That's not an uncommon thing. So I think that one's fairly easy. Again, another one that's fairly easy to think that is possible.
Yeah. The first one about the idea of it being in a household going through divorce. When you look at the pictures on the wall, there's no family photo.
There's no family photo. There's no photo of a father. And I've just because I'm looking at part of the theory, and there's a still from when Andy's mum is taking his present to him, and she's not got a wedding ring on.
Yeah.
As well. Another one. And if anything, that is something that would be included in. It's not something that would be forgotten in the animation. Pixar are known for their incredible attention to detail, and just their fantastic. That is not something that would be forgotten.
As well as that, Andy's mum seems to be very protective of him, and she makes sure that he's happy. There's one scene where they go to get pizza at Pizza Planet or whatever, and I can't remember. I don't think this was part of his birthday present. This was just she brought him there just because. Whatever reason, it seems as though she's being kind of lenient, and not she's never a bitch. She seems like an awesome person, and I think that could be out of sympathy or maybe understanding, just to help him cope with the situation or something. But yeah, it's kind of really sad to think about that one, isn't it? It's somewhat.
Yeah, and I mean, there's other parts where it explains how the idea that Buzz and Woody represent the two kind of almost halves of a father that would have been there. You've got the very stern and kind of authority figure of Buzz.
Yeah.
And then you've got the kind of you've got a friend in your father kind of idea. That kind of nuclear family kind of idea.
Yeah.
As it were, of your father's your friend as well as your authority figure.
I really like that they never actually referenced it. I think that's a lot better because it doesn't make kids watch it and wonder where he is. You know what I mean? It's sort of normalizing a thing that is very prevalent. You think that was in the 90s as well. That's kind of a strange level of progression that they had at the time. But
I mean, we've talked about how I'm not sure if I can't remember if we've talked about it on the podcast or just in general before, but there is plenty of other pop culture references in Toy Story and throughout Toy Story and Pixar films in general that you can pick up now if you watch it back.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, and I think that it would be completely reasonable and easy to pick up the fact that there is no father at all. And as a child, you don't notice that kind of thing.
No, you don't at all.
But I think once it's been kind of highlighted that there isn't one, it kind of becomes a lot more obvious.
Yeah, and you have to think as well, when they were writing the show, it would have come up. Like, they would have had to say what... Like, they could have just done it for convenience, though, when you think about it. Like, if there was another person in the household to witness the toys coming to life or whatever, it would really hinder the telling of the story.
Yeah.
So it could be just something like that. But either way, I really like Pixar's decision to do that. I think it's very understanding, and it's very normal, you know.
I've also, I mean, just to contradict everything we've just really said, I've just remembered that I did read almost a counter to this whole theory, in that they simply couldn't afford to animate another character.
Oh, really?
And a father to, you know, animate, voice, and introduce, or not introduce, but, you know, bring this character into the whole thing.
Yeah.
They just simply couldn't afford it at that point.
You'd wonder how true that is, though.
Because I mean, it was their first film, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it's very star-studded. Like, if you look at the people doing the voices, like, they're not cheap.
Yeah,
you know?
Tom Hanks and that. Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't know. I kind of don't. I don't know if I'd believe that or not. Like, it's probably... Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it has a legitimate basis in reality, but at the same time, if they really wanted to do it, I reckon they could have done it. Like,
yeah.
But it would explain as well why Sid's parents don't have faces.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's why in Cow and Chicken the parents have no bodies, because they couldn't afford to add it in, so they just left them as legs.
To be honest, that is probably the easiest thing, because how easy is it to animate 2 legs instead of animating mouths, facial expressions, and the like?
I reckon I could do it.
Alright, that's your task for next week. That's your homework.
That'll be the, instead of just a background image, it'll just be 2 legs moving slightly with every sentence that's said and stuff like that. I'm not doing that, by the way. If anyone leaves a comment expecting that, you're going to be bitterly disappointed. But shall we move on to another childhood classic movie?
Yep, go for it.
Right, this one is about E.T., and you've probably all heard about this because it had a... I don't know, I've never heard of this before, but over the last few months it's been all over Facebook, and it's the idea that E.T. was actually a Jedi, and there are 6 screenshots of the movie that back this theory up, and the first is Yoda standing in the Senate chamber, and then while the Senate chamber zooms out on all of the participants, you can see the E.T. type creatures. They look exactly like him. And one E.T. guy obviously comes to Earth, and he plays with Star Wars toys, or he comes across a Yoda, or someone dressed as Yoda, and he recognizes him. And then the last slide, it says, it's reasonable to assume that E.T. can make bikes and toys fly by using the Force, which must mean E.T. is a fucking Jedi. And I think that's great and all, but it doesn't make him a Jedi at all. And I think the fact that he's in the Senate chamber and never seen on the Jedi Council proves that none of them are a Jedi. But even if it does, like, Star Wars takes place a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, so it could be hypothesized that one ET guy did become a Jedi. But I don't believe that, because what Jedi wouldn't be able to communicate using language? Someone's gonna comment some
telepathic
Jedi
powers or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and if he can use the Force, why doesn't he use it more often? It's
and
more probable. Like, yeah, why would he feel like an alien?
Why would he fucking waddle everywhere very slowly?
Yeah,
and excruciatingly slowly during. I'm not sure I can describe it as chase scenes, but, like, you know, why would he choose to decide to waddle in moments of peril?
Yeah,
like. And it's fair. It's, you know, it's possible that they could be, you know, not related to the Jedis, but, you know, he could have known the Jedis, and it taken him all this time to travel to Earth.
Yeah.
But he's not a Jedi.
No, he's not. Like, you know, he can fly, right? And he made the thing fly, and that's fine. But that could just be something that other people have in the Star Wars universe. Like, Watto can fly in Episode 1. Fair enough, he's got wings, but that's just one example of how different creatures can be in the same universe. So it's not impossible or I don't know. He's not a Jedi though. Like,
no, it's not. It's not impossible that he's from the same atmosphere. Universe.
In fact, it's likely.
Yeah, it's incredibly likely. But then again, you saying that certain other characters and other, I suppose races isn't the correct term, but in Star Wars can fly as well.
Yeah.
In Peter Pan, your Tinkerbell can sprinkle you with dust, and your happiness makes you fly. Like,
yeah.
I know that's completely off the.
So you're saying Tinkerbell is a Jedi?
What I'm saying is that E.T. is Tinkerbell.
Oh right, yeah. And the wand is a lightsaber.
Yeah, why the fuck not?
Yeah, that's all I wanted to say about that was fuck off with all your stupid E.T. theories. He's not a Jedi because I don't want him to be a Jedi, and what I say goes, and that's the end of it.
Good stuff.
Yeah. So let's move on from that one.
Let's move on to something again slightly different. We don't seem to have very very good segues for this one, I'm afraid.
No, these are awful.
But yeah. Anyway, Courage the Cowardly Dog.
Yeah.
If you've never seen it, it's about a dog.
I'm gonna confess to only ever having seen about 4 episodes of this, so my memory of it is very, very tainted. And well, no, tainted is the wrong word. Like, it's not like he beat me up once so that I remember him. My memory of it is foggy. Let's leave it at that.
But anybody who has seen even brief snippets of the show will remember that there are a lot of terrifying looking characters, and there are a lot of very scary seeming characters.
Yeah,
in
it's
the
actually
show.
a really conceptually disturbing cartoon, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's just a dog being terrified of everything, and I don't know, it's not nice.
Yep. But the basic fan theory is that it's the monsters that Courage is terrified of and sees all the time are just normal human beings, but they're seen through this old possibly a dog that was possibly abused or mistreated at some point in its life, and the reason that it thinks that it lives on a farm in the middle of nowhere is because it's too old to actually go out properly to see what's outside, as it were.
Yeah.
And the idea that they are just normal people dressed dressed as they are, and this is just the way that Courage the Cowardly Dog perceives these people. And
this is probably the basis for the show, I'd imagine. Like, that theory, by the way, came from Digadoog492 from Reddit. Just thought I'd give him a shout out because his name is fantastic. But one of my mates, Andy, you met Andy, didn't you, in London?
Yeah, I think so.
He's got a dog who came from, they got her from a shelter, but I think she was abused, like, and that's why she was put into a shelter after she got taken off the guy or whatever who owned her. And I've had times where I've gone to Andy's house and the dog just goes crazy at me, and I've been like, what the hell, like, I'm a dog guy, I've got a dog, and I love dogs, but she just goes nuts at me. Now she's tiny, so it doesn't affect me in any way, but Andy told me like that she was beaten and stuff when she was younger, so she has a hard time accepting new people into the house sometimes. And that's probably, like, if you hear a story like that and you're a guy who writes TV shows, that's gonna like at least influence you in what you do. And it's very possible that if this dog was like that, then everything around him is terrifying because he hasn't been what's the word I'm looking for here? He hasn't been brought back to normality in that sense. You don't counsel a dog, but there's a way of
treating it right to make it, help it realise that there's nothing to be feared about with good people, as it were.
Yeah, or conditioning it.
Yeah, conditioning it to almost not forget its past trauma, as it were. But kind of making it accept that you're not going to hurt it, and that most people are good and not going to hurt it.
Yeah, and I like that theory. But it's such a that makes it such a tragic TV show because, like, I did I say it to you before? I think maybe in a podcast about how if you see if you see a dog getting beaten up, or if you see a hurt dog, your first instinct is to go and help it. Humans are like that with dogs. We obviously love dogs, like, they're awesome. And to see a dog in such distress every single episode is it's not nice. And then when you if you get the impression that it's actually real and the dog is afraid of all of these humans, that's terrifying for the poor little dog.
I mean, I've got a dog. You've said you've got a dog, and there are certain things that dogs are afraid of. My dog's afraid of the vacuum, and the Hoover and fireworks.
Yeah.
And I know I've dropped books on the floor before and stuff, and my dog's flinched. And my dog's was a sheltered dog, and although she wasn't necessarily abused, some people do use negative reinforcement, to train a dog.
Yeah, they do.
And even though that's, I suppose, not really abuse, but it is, a form of abuse, I guess, really.
Yeah, that's actually not really the accepted practice anymore either, isn't it?
No, it's positive reinforcement, which I agree with, to be honest.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you think about how terrified Courage is constantly of all these monsters that are coming into his home, it does take on a very kind of dark, like a lot of them, especially like with Rugrats and stuff like that. It takes on a pretty dark vein to it,
It's very strange to think that there are kids watching it and enjoying it when it's so kind of warped, I guess.
Yeah, but then again, when you're a kid, you don't think about those things because your mind is pure and innocent, as it were.
When you think about it, though, I used to love Johnny Bravo, and when I watch it now, I realize he's a fucking creep.
Yeah,
he's a vain...
the sexism, the misogyny, the
chauvinism.
Yeah, he's a dreadful role model.
He is
absolutely
actually,
awful.
Going back to James Bond, so is he.
Yeah,
he's a murdering womanizer.
Yeah,
like he's a horrible human.
He's a drunk.
Yeah,
well.
I guess that's why those things don't. I think that's why I don't like James Bond anymore. Is because everything he does just makes me go like, oh, if you're not saving the world, like, fair enough, but you don't need to go around, being a misogynist and all this stuff. Like, fucking yeah, that's so weird that if this is going back to the Bond one briefly, but if they're all different agents, isn't it funny how they all happen to be alcoholic, womanizing murderers? Like, you have to be one of those to work for MI6.
Surely, if you're the top of the top, you've been screened for your horrendous alcoholism and sex dependency.
Yeah. Yeah, that is like when they do the job interview for Bond, the question any weaknesses, if it's not followed up by like, I'm a womanizing alcoholic with a tendency to kill people, then you don't get the job, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Unlucky Bond.
I can't remember what film it was in, but there was a part of it where he goes in for an interview with his boss, or he goes in to talk with his boss, and it's like 9 a.m. and the boss offers him a drink, like an alcoholic drink, and he goes, oh, no thanks. Or, he says, or he's not too sure about it. And the boss pours one, and he says, he changes his mind, and then the boss just looks at him and goes, you fucking alcoholic. And it's like, it's that kind of thing. I can't remember what it is. It might be American Beauty, I can't remember. Probably not. I'm probably just imagining that, but...
I've seen that movie. I'm trying to think if he had I can't remember.
It might be. Anyway.
Yeah.
The next fan theory we've got is Pinky and the Brain.
Yeah, and this is one of my favourite ones.
Yeah, I really enjoy this one as well. The basic premise, anyone that's seen the show will know that it's about two lab rats, essentially.
Yeah. And
Pinky and the Brain, and Brain is constantly trying to take over the world, and Pinky's quote unquote stupidity always manages to foil his plots.
Yeah.
And in the whole theory is the fact that Pinky is actually a genius and Brain is insane.
Yeah, because the line says
in the theme
Pinky
song,
and the Brain. One is a
genius, the other is insane.
Yeah.
And if you're talking about them, respectively, then they line up as Pinky being the genius and Brain being insane. And insanity isn't a nullifier for intelligence.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that does.
Yeah.
But you're probably thinking, but how is Pinky a genius? And if you want to know that, you came to the right place.
Yes, you did. There are several things throughout the throughout the series and throughout the various shows, where Brain comes up with this plan to dominate the world, and then somehow Pinky's, again, quote unquote, stupidity is what destroys that plan. But if you look at it as Pinky being the genius, he is stopping Brain from, dominating the world, as it were. He's rescuing the world every time.
Yeah, exactly. There was a part I read which was in the second episode of the show, and they're going on some TV show, like a
TV quiz show, yeah.
Yeah, and Brain, like, he builds himself a big suit so that when he wears it, he looks like a human. But he loses it by not being able to correctly answer a question that Pinky actually knew the answer to.
Yeah.
And in the same episode, it shows that Pinky's able to read. It shows him reading like a newspaper or something like that. And Brain has written his name. Can't even
write his own name, yeah.
Yeah, he's written it like it looks like
a child, like
exactly.
a 4 or 5 year old would,
Yeah.
But and there's the that's one of the big things, and then what am I trying to say? Oh yeah, and when Brain creates a smart machine to turn Pinky into a genius, his personality doesn't change at all.
Yeah.
Which does give give the idea that if anything, that forces the idea even more that he is already smart.
Yeah, he's already doing it.
His personality hasn't changed, or his intelligence level hasn't changed at all from this quote unquote smart machine.
Yeah, so basically they're both very intelligent. There's no idiot in the show, but Brain's insanity somewhat hinders his
intelligence.
Yeah, pretty much. And Pinky can't outright show his intelligence because he wants to be there to foil all of the Brain's plans. Which makes sense.
Yeah.
And also, Pinky could just be having a great time with, like, if someone asked me, are you thinking what I'm thinking? I'm obviously going to come up with a ridiculous suggestion. Like, it's always like, Pinky, are you thinking what I'm thinking? I think so, Brain, but how are we going to get a ladder? Like, it's always stuff like that. That's every episode. Like, I would do the exact same thing if someone asked me such a stupid question.
Yeah, I completely forgot about those his suggestions.
Yeah.
And they are brilliant.
Yeah, his.
But how are we going to get 43 kilos of cheese?
Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah, I'm sorry. How have you jumped the gun that much? But yeah, those are that's a great show, wasn't it? Like that and Dexter's Laboratory, I thought were really fun to watch.
Again, I don't know if you could go as far as to claim that Dee Dee is a genius, but he's always Dexter's always trying to. What is he trying to do? Murder the other guy, isn't he?
Yeah, Mandark.
Yeah, Mandark. He's a 9-year-old or whatever, however old he is, and he's constantly trying to devise ways to murder his next door neighbour.
Dee Dee is such a fucking bitch.
Oh God, I hated her.
What does this button do? Dee Dee, get out of my lab!
Oh dear.
Did you see the episode of Dexter with all the swearing in it?
Yeah.
That's fucking dark. It's like for anyone who hasn't seen it, Dexter is creating it's a machine that eradicates rudeness, and he's trying to use it on Dee Dee so that she stops being rude. It's called Rude something, but he's using the machine, and Dee Dee is an idiot, so she gets the two of them trapped inside the machine, and the machine works, and two alternate versions of Dexter and Dee Dee come out, but they're the rude versions, and that's the rudeness in them being
projected.
Yeah, onto these two other, I guess you'd call them avatars.
Yeah.
And they're just like, the mum makes them dinner, and Dexter's like, what the fuck is this? And all, and there's just loads of swearing in it, and it's really, really weird.
I can tell you now that the writers of that show just got drunk and went, well, fuck it. Look, why not?
Who's gonna stop me? You?
Yeah. Who's going to stop me?
So.
I write the fucking show. No one's going to stop me. Yeah.
We need to write a TV show or something just so we can do that and fuck with people. But the next... Will we move on from that?
Yeah.
The next one is my favorite one ever out of anything in the world. It's actually my favorite thing ever. It's not even my favorite fan theory. It's my favorite thing. This is called The Truth About Pokemon, and this is very lengthy and in-depth, but still not even the entire thing. Now if you Google this, you'll likely be linked to a lot of blogs about how Pokemon is Satanism. So you want to avoid those, because that's not what I'm getting at here. I read this idea. I read that it came from 4chan, but also on the blog that I'm going to link in the description, it says that either Francis Bacon, Mary Ann Evans, or George Eliot may have originally produced this theory. And it's really, really detailed, but honestly, it blew my mind when I first read it. Essentially, it theorizes that following the incident when Ash was struck by lightning, is that what happened in the first episode, by the way? Because I don't remember seeing it.
As far as I can remember, yeah.
He was cycling his bike or something, and he gets hit by lightning.
He's always riding his bike.
Yeah, fucking dick. But yeah, he got struck by lightning and got sent into a coma. I can't remember it that well, like I said, but supposedly Team Rocket were initially a lot more menacing than they were after the incident, which is meant to symbolize his stabilizing condition, and that his body's accepting the medication he's being put under while he's in hospital. And the notion that he's in a coma explains why he never ages in the entire series, and why the government and all of the kind of government officials and things like that, they all work very flawlessly. It could also explain why there's only one nurse and one police officer in every fucking town that they go to. Nurse Jenny and... is that what it is? Or is it Nurse Joy?
Nurse Joy. And
police officer Jenny. They're probably people that Ash knows in real life. Each of Ash's travel companions represent a different aspect of his psyche. Before he went into a coma, he never had a girlfriend. Obviously, he's quite young, but he had urges, obviously, which is what Brock is there to symbolize, because he falls in love with every single girl in the entire fucking universe, but never succeeds to win any of them over, because Ash never succeeded in real life before he was in the coma. The interpretation of Misty presented in the theory is pretty deep. I'd kind of encourage you guys to read it for yourselves, but basically the idea of her is that she's a prominent character in pretty much every episode that I used to watch as a kid anyways, but she's completely unattainable because Ash is too young to have a relationship with her anyway. Neither of them are mature enough, and Ash kind of stops her from maturing because he doesn't want her to grow up or whatever. Supposedly he wouldn't let her keep some Pokemon, the name of which I can't pronounce. Another guy in it is Gary Oak, who represents Ash's aspirations as a human being. He's kind of the perfect standard for which Ash wants to mirror. And Team Rocket are the parts of Ash that he hates about himself and that he has to learn to live with. My favourite part in it is actually about Meowth, which is that he represents Ash's corrupted innocence, because he's a cat, but he can speak. And cats are perfectly innocent creatures, but from studying them, we know that they're actually kind of evil. So if a cat could speak, we wouldn't view them as being good anymore, because most of what they'd say would be pretty deplorable. But Pikachu is meant to represent Ash's humanity, that he's the one thing that Ash cannot lose in the world. He'll go through hell for him. He'll travel to the other side of the universe to find him. He won't let him evolve into a Raichu, because he's the one symbol that Ash needs in order to get himself out of this or whatever. The narrator is meant to be just Ash's higher mind, which is why it all he really does is point out what's going on. And that's, I talked about that for a long time, but the story gets a lot more intense and dark than that, and it's really long, but I would really encourage everyone to read it. It's fucking incredible. It's a really, really good read. I'll leave the link to it in the description, like I said. But wow, what do you think of that?
I'm not sure there's much we can say without not giving away the crux of the story, but going too deeply into it, without having to read even more into it. And I don't want to kind of spoil it, as it were, for everybody that actually wants to read it for the first time. But I mean, it's a really interesting kind of idea, because the mind is such a complex thing, and it's got so many levels to it. Your subconscious can be broken down into all of these things, that you listed, with the differences in characters. And I mean, you could take, you can make your own, you can have your own take on what each of the different characters and each of the different people represent, but they are, that's a fairly, as far as I'm concerned, that's the most comprehensive and probably most logical list for all the characters.
The Meowth one especially really gets me. Like, I think that's really, really fucking good. It just makes perfect sense. Like,
yeah, I think his the projection of the singular character for the nurse and the policeman, that was possible. And I heard another one that, as far as I remember, Team Rocket were the first responders.
Oh, really?
To him when he was hit by the lightning.
That makes
or something
sense,
like that, but he was, they were warped in his mind, or something like that. I'd have to find it, but I don't want to waste time doing so.
So it's I don't know. I said it in, I think it was the last one, about when I was talking about Metal Gear Solid, was that Japanese writers do typically put a lot of extra detail into their writings. I guess it's maybe practice over there or something, but I know a lot of Japanese creations have incredibly detailed descriptions about things, and the same thing that we said from the opening one with Rugrats, is that it's not impossible that someone writing something for kids wanted to put an extra layer into it. This one, I don't know, I kind of think it just happens to
coincide.
Yeah, because while it all makes perfect sense, I'm not a neurologist or anything in that sense. I'm more philosophically inclined than I am biologically inclined, so I couldn't tell you if how much sense it makes, but it makes perfect sense in my head because it's merely an interpretation. I really, really like it, especially the one about the government. Like, when you think about it, nothing ever goes wrong. And it's kind of like when you're a kid, you don't care about budgets or anything like that.
Nothing. You don't have anything to worry about, and there's the whole innocence, almost, of Ash throughout the whole thing, really, where in reality they're fighting these wild creatures, in the most dangerous of circumstances, and it's not something. Even if it was real, it's like, it would be like, I know this is a bit odd, but it would be like someone giving their 10-year-old a Rottweiler to go dogfighting.
Yeah. or just a fucking dragon, like, or a Rottweiler and some fire, because if you think about it, if two people in the Pokemon world, whenever they battle each other or whatever, they seem to have like fairly personal issues sometimes. If you've got a Charizard up against someone that you don't like, I would be telling him to burn that motherfucker. But Pokemon never murder humans or vice versa. Like, it's all very childlike in that sense.
It's all very, like, even though there's this whole fight thing, the Pokemon, as far as I remember, don't die. They just faint.
Yeah.
So there's no element of death really in Pokemon. Feel free to, if anyone has seen and has a meticulous knowledge of all of the episodes of Pokemon, to point out that I'm wrong.
I can recall one episode where they were in, like, this was one of the early ones. Ash was like in a cave somewhere. He was stranded, and Charmander wanted to keep him warm with the flame on his tail, but Ash seemed to be under the impression that if Charmander's fire went out, that he would die. And he was telling him to go back into his Pokeball and all. But I guess that's the only thing that I can think of off the top of my head, anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just another element of his innocence as a child, really.
Yeah.
And I think the whole thing about Brock as well being his early form of sexuality, I guess, is pretty spot on, because.
Yeah, there's no way that someone would fail that many times and keep fucking trying. Like, who does that?
And I mean, if you think about it, Brock is, I wouldn't say it's difficult to personify Brock as, kind of the strapping, he is kind of tall, strapping. He's got a killer jawline.
Yeah, he's got great eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, like, he's kind of that tall, dark, and handsome, I guess.
Yeah.
I suppose that's the easiest way I can really describe it. That kind of idea.
He also says one of the funniest jokes I've ever heard when he's Ash and Brock, I guess, and Misty, I think, is there as well, but they're running somewhere because it's raining and they want to get shelter, and Brock pulls out a frying pan and says, "I'll make my frying pan a drying pan," and puts it on his head. And If that's not the greatest joke you've heard all day, post in the comment section what the greatest joke you've heard today is, and I'll tell you it's not as good as the Brock one. But I like the. Have you ever seen the TV show Life on Mars by any chance?
Yes.
That's a really good TV show.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
I think that adding a coma to something just gives you a lot of creative freedom to kind of do what you want to do. I think that's a really cool, what's the word? Sort of an alternate look at what a coma could be. The world that he's in.
That whole show is a fan theory in itself.
Yeah.
Like, there is, there is no way you can make a singular fan theory out of that, because it's just like, oh, he's in a coma. Oh no, he's not. Oh no, wait, he is. He's actually been sent back in time. No, he hasn't. Oh god, what the fuck is going on?
I'd love to write, like, you know how people come up with these fan theories, like we've taken some from Reddit and 4chan and whatever. I'd love to write one that's like, in Life on Mars, Sam Tyler, the reason that he's in 1973 is because he actually had an accident and he sent him into a coma. Like, just explain what the show is, but act like you're interpreting it on a super, like, intelligent level.
Deep level.
Yeah, so like the reason I think this is because at the start of every episode it's stated I had an accident and woke up in 1973.
Yeah.
That's really where, like, and just point to all the obvious things just so that people can comment and be like, you're a fucking idiot.
Yeah. Life on Mars is actually on Netflix if anybody wants to watch it.
Yeah, and I'd recommend
UK
it.
Netflix, as far as I'm aware.
It's really good.
I thoroughly enjoyed it.
There's only like 16 episodes or something too.
Something like that, but there's the follow-on series, Ashes to Ashes.
Yeah, I didn't
as
like
well,
that
which
one
wasn't
so much.
as good.
No.
But is his name Gene Simmons?
Gene
DCI?
Simmons is the guy from Kiss.
Yes, you're right.
His name is Gene. Philip Glenister is the guy who plays him.
Yeah, his name's Gene something.
Let's call him Gene Simmons. I like.
Yeah,
him.
why not?
He's got a really long tongue and he paints his face white. It's very strange.
Yeah, but he's fucking hilarious as well.
He's brilliant.
Yeah.
His one-liners are incredible. Like I remember when I first watched that show, I was like 16, and in school, anytime anyone had anything to say to me, I would just reply like, "What are you talking about, you brain donor?" and just all stuff like that. He would say like all these amazing one-liners and stuff.
Yeah, he's that kind of a typical copper that's a bit off the rails and won't hesitate to clothesline someone that's running away with a purse.
Yeah. And they did a really good job as well in that show of putting it in the 70s before regulations were strictly enforced.
Yeah.
So that you could have a rogue cop
who isn't even rogue.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's actually adored by his peers and his higher ups and everything.
Also, if you're going to watch Life on Mars, never watch it with someone who lived in the 70s or knows a lot about the 70s, because like I sat there and watched it with my dad, and he would sit there and go, that car wasn't out until 78. It's set in 73. Fuck off, Dad, no one cares. Like they did really well with all of the things, and and he'd point to a car in the background and just go, that car was released in 82.
It's like I'd say never watch anything with anyone who's alive
ever.
in this. No, with anyone ever. Yeah, but like I know from watching loads of stuff, I notice things like that, but I don't pick up on it because like all you're really saying there is I know this information. Like I am clever enough to know this. You know what I mean? Like you read it on IMDb and all, people saying stuff. Oh well, that gun wouldn't work then because it wasn't fully completed and all. It's like, I don't really care.
I don't care that much.
No, the gun could just be an interpretation of the previous gun, like a fan theory about that in itself.
It's all a dream.
Yeah.
But one of our last, second to last, I guess, if I'm right, fan theory is one about Back to the Future.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy Back to the Future. And the idea is that at the start of Back to the Future, when Doc is standing in front of the car, it's a suicide attempt, and that he mentions that all of his previous inventions have been failures, and so him standing in front of the car is the idea that it gives the idea that if this one's a failure, it will kill him, but if it isn't, obviously, and it works, he won't get hit by it, and life is great.
Yeah, and it's another reason to continue on. True. It's very, very dark.
Yeah, I mean, it adds a. I mean, because of course, as soon as he doesn't get hit by the car, everything's dandy. Then after that, because he's able to reevaluate his life because probably his most ambitious invention is, it works.
Yeah.
But if you watch it at the start, he's obtained is it uranium from some Czech terrorists or something.
It's definitely not unobtainium, which is the worst name ever given to a
don't.
thing.
Don't, I know.
I've got a fan theory about Avatar, and the theory is that it's shit, and let's move on from that.
It is.
But yeah, I think it is uranium, yeah.
Yeah, he's obtained uranium or plutonium or something similarly radioactive and difficult to get from some Chechen terrorists or something like that.
Yeah.
And that in itself is an extremely dangerous and ridiculously... It's something only a man with nothing left to lose would try and attempt.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
A lot of the things that happen leading up to that point do kind of seem very... what's the word I'm looking for? Dangerous, I guess. Questionable, dangerous. There's another word, and that word is going to haunt me until I remember it. But
the word I have in my head is flamboyant, but that's just because he's a very flamboyant character. Yeah, I can't think of that word.
Yeah.
It'll annoy me now too, because I know exactly how that feels, because it happened to me earlier. But yeah, I don't know. Good luck on your endeavor. But that fan theory is, I imagine that the strongest counter argument to that is, like I said, the Doc is a very flamboyant character, and does it really seem out of character for him to do it? Not really, but at the same time, if he's living like a man who has nothing to lose, nothing that he does is out of character, because he wouldn't give a fuck anyway. Apart from all the racism that he says. Your kids, Marty.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's relatively plausible, especially he does mention that all of his past inventions have been failures, and that's got to take a heavy toll on a man who's dedicated his life to making these things,
Yeah.
And especially, how could something so ridiculously ambitious like a time machine in a DeLorean, be something that you were sure was going to work by standing in front of it?
Suddenly I'm noticing why all of his other ones were failures. Like, if that's his idea, then Jesus, man, like, no wonder you're a failure. Like, but then again, it worked, so he kind of has the last laugh here.
Yeah, he does.
That's so dark. They're all so dark, aren't
they? They do get a lot really dark, unless it's just like, it was a dream.
Yeah, the dream one is the best, because it can just be applied to every fucking movie. Like,
I feel like the dream one is just a bit of a cop-out.
I'd love to, like, imagine if there was a movie. Well, there are plenty of movies like this where someone just goes to sleep in the middle of the movie and then they wake up the next day. Like, imagine that whole rest of the movie is just a big dream, and they wake up at the end. How cheated would you feel?
So cheated.
The Matrix, the whole movie is a dream because Neo falls asleep at the start. You may remember. So that proves that.
And he was just having a nap.
Yeah. It was a 10-minute dream dragged across 3 movies. That's just the way the dreams work. It's crazy. By the way, would you take the red pill or the blue pill if you were
I'm not going to get into this.
Really?
Nope.
You obviously have.
I feel like it's a rabbit hole that will just go down. If I say something and you disagree, then we'll argue about this for quite a while.
I think we'd both take the same thing.
Probably.
Yeah. So we have one fan theory left, and this is also quite a recent one, but I think the director of the movie actually said that this was the accepted one. And I know that 2 of the actors have come out in interviews and said that this is what the story was truly trying to tell, but they could never get the FDA approval if they. So basically, this is the movie.
This is the movie Friends with Benefits, and kind of. Would you say star-studded lineup?
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. We have. I believe we have in the past expressed our admiration and love of Justin Timberlake.
Yes. What a guy.
What a guy. And this is the general idea surrounding Friends with Benefits, that Justin Timberlake's father He has, if anyone hasn't seen it, he has Alzheimer's in the film.
Yeah.
And we've discussed this on the Fears and Phobias podcast, I think it was. His father has Alzheimer's, and if you've seen the film, you'll know that they live by the beach.
Yep, and they have a boat as well, which... And I have another layer to this one, actually. You may remember that the dad went to get the boat, and then he was informed that the boat was sold years ago, and it's a symptom of his Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
Or the boat crashed in the sea, and the sea people were responsible for it. Now, the sea people can come in all forms, really. Oftentimes they look like the creature of the Black Lagoon, but supposedly they've been working on certain technology so that they can infiltrate human society.
Yep.
And the Alzheimer's is merely their...
The sea person that has inhabited his father's body's inability to assimilate to human life.
Yeah, he's unable to fit in, and he's trying to infiltrate our culture to find the weaknesses and pressing points for when they inevitably do take over the world. But it's obviously there was something fishy about his demeanor, so he had to come up with a cop out, and that was the brutal slow death and whatever it's called that is Alzheimer's. So that's the whole reason that he has Alzheimer's. It's not actually a disease that he has. It's merely that he's just a sea person, and that's why he takes off his trousers in the middle of that restaurant.
He doesn't know human etiquette. He's not used to having the confines of the trousers wrapped around his fins.
Yeah. And wasn't there a deleted scene where they go to a restaurant and he orders a blue whale, and they serve him a gigantic blue whale on the table, and it's really awkward because he's trying to eat it, and you think it's just because he's got Alzheimer's, but it's actually because
you're forgetting the director's cut actually includes a scene where they're walking along the beach and they go past a seafood restaurant, and it's an all-you-can-eat buffet, and he goes and cries in front of the lobsters.
Yeah, I remember that scene. That was a really good scene. I really thought I'd be able to hold this together a lot better than I have.
So yeah, that's the latest fan theory. That's the big one that's spreading around the internet now.
Yeah, that one is. Yeah, that's the real deal, though. They've all come out and publicly stated that it's definitely true, and the reason they couldn't just make a balls to the wall version of Timberlake fighting them with guns and stuff is because we don't know what layers of society they have infiltrated. I know David Icke believes that the Queen is a sea creature, so.
And I know a lot of celebrities and a lot of very famous people are converting to the Church of Scientology.
That's the best one yet. But yeah, that is and yeah, Tom Cruise. Yeah.
Oh.
What do you do when you go on the sea?
You cruise. Ah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So if that doesn't, make you terrified for what's at hand for the future of humanity, I don't know what will.
No.
But I think we're done here.
Yep, I think so. Beware the sea people.
Yes, beware them. Thanks for coming on the show again.
No problem.
And I guess to everybody watching, keep watching the sea.
just asked for more. You just asked for more. Everything I gave, just like